Ben Winston, you directed and produced Friends: The Reunion, a nonfiction special that brings the cast back together for a retrospective look at the series. So first off, how did the opportunity come about to take the reins of this? Because a lot of people have wanted to see this or something like it for a long time.
I know, yeah, it was definitely a burden to carry over the last couple of years that I knew I was going to take something that was so beloved that is such a part of our either childhood or teenagehood or adulthood in a way, a show that's so sort of loved around the world. It came up. I got a phone call. I was doing the Casey Musgraves Christmas show for Amazon in the summer of 2019, and I was surrounded by sort of snow and Santa Clauses and sleigh bells and everything, and suddenly get this phone call from Mike Darnell at Warner Brothers saying it was 25 years of the Friends reunion. Would I be interested in having a think about whether there was an idea for a show? And I they set me up with a meeting with Marta Kaufman and David Crane and Kevin Bright, three heroes of mine, truthfully, as a producer in television. When you meet people who have achieved as much as they have, I was sort of quite starstruck at the meeting. And sat with them and pitched what I thought was an idea of how we could sort of pay tribute to their show, but in an entertaining way, more than just a discussion or but with a bit of fun involved in it. And then I went around the cast one by one, meeting them and pitching them and discussing whether this is ever anything they would consider doing, and they agreed. And we were going to shoot it on March 22nd, 2020. And then with a week to go, as we all know, the world shut down. So suddenly we had to do pre-production on this show a couple of times. But I'm so happy that we finally got it out last week, and people seem to enjoy it.
And do you have a lot of personal history with the show? Was it a show that you watched a lot at the time, or caught up on later, or more recently, maybe?
Well, growing up in England, it was one of those shows that was always on, and I think that when you're sort of living in the suburbs of London, I think you just assume that Friends life is American life, because that's what we would be seeing every single night on our television. I loved the show. I can't say I was a huge fan of it. I really I thought it was brilliant, but it was my wife that, when we've been together 15 years now, my wife and I, and she's one of those people that can just has it on in the background. It's almost like she's listening to the radio. Like she's just always got one of those episodes on and joining in with it all. So I was sort of quite excited to take this on also, just partly because I knew it would give her such a buzz too. But when lockdown happened, I actually went back and I sat and watched all 236 episodes of the show in those few months. And it really struck me how amazing the show is to this day, and how it stands up, and how that writing is second to none. So funny, so clever, but also the acting. Those 6 performers at the top of their game, with performances that are just so impressive. And so, funnily enough, the stop down almost got me even more excited about the time when I would eventually get to make this, direct it, and what have you, because I got to rewatch that whole series all over again.
Was it a challenge to figure out how, like in one special, like you're going to encapsulate a show that ran like 10 years? Like how do you decide like what to focus on and areas? Was there a lot of difficult choices having to be made?
Well, yeah, I think the one thing I really wanted to do was make it really multifaceted. It's essentially, if you've seen it, you'll have seen that it's part documentary. It's part just a film about 6 people who went through something crazy in their lives 27 years ago, and them revisiting a place that changed their life, whether that would be a TV show or anything that happened in their life. That is a fascinating sort of documentary to make with these 6 people. And so it was important to me that when we, for example, recreated those sets, we spent a lot of time to make sure that everything from their dressing rooms to the way the seats were set out in the audience bleachers to the lights were exactly how they were back when that cast walked off that set 17 years ago, so that when they would walk back on the set. And remember, those people haven't been in a room. The 6 of them have only been together in a room once in 17 years. Doesn't mean they haven't spoken or seen each other in 2s and 3s, but the 6 of them together has only happened once in 17 years. So that in itself was a documentary. Then at the same time, we were making sort of this outdoor spectacular and interview and sort of almost like the talk show side of it. That's also intercut with beautiful elements like them doing table reads of really iconic scenes, and then some just fun variety. The idea of the fashion show where we, got all of their costumes out of archive and got sort of from Cara Delevingne to Cindy Crawford to model them, or recreating the quiz, which was such an iconic episode, but rather than making it what it was in the episode about who knows each other better, girls or boys, who knows more about Friends as a show. So it was about trying to take all of these different elements and making the film really work and flow together in a way. And then, of course, having the hundreds of fans from Ghana to Cambodia to India to Russia talking about what the show meant to them gave it like that global scope. And then finally, it was also sort of thinking, well, I don't want to just show clips because I think that's a boring thing to do. But then you've got to show clip. You've got to show why the show's so great. So finding those great people to give those interviews, Reese Witherspoon or Malala or BTS, and for them to talk about why the show mattered to them and then choose their favorite clip. It sort of meant that we would touch all bases and make a film, which is a hefty, it's like an hour 45 film, which I hope people will really enjoy and respond to well. But I definitely felt pressure on hitting all of the different elements of what people love about that show, because everyone's definitely got an opinion on it. That is for sure.
And James Corden is featured in the special, interviewing the 6 actors. And of course, you've worked with him extensively on his show and Carpool Karaoke over the years. Did all that experience, I can only imagine, that really helped in putting together this kind of multifaceted variety show? Well,
James is one of my closest mates in the world, and I wanted to find somebody to. They're not the host of the show because they're only in about 20% of it is that, but they're almost like moderating a panel discussion in a way. And truthfully, I didn't put James forward for it because I was thinking they're just going to think that I'm, wanting my mate to do it. And Bright, Kaufman, Crane, and the 6 cast, they had a list of 5 names who they wanted. And all of those 5 names were very different. Everybody had a different 5. But number 1 on every single one of those 9 names was James. And he took a bit of perspective. He's a mega Friends fan, but he also wanted to think about it's a big responsibility to take that on in a way. But I was sort of quite moved by the fact that they all wanted him so much and called him and asked him to do it, because I was like, I'm staying out of this. If you guys want to do that, then that's great. But it's easier for me if I'm slightly step outside of it. But they sort of spoke to him and wanted him to do it, and I was so glad he said yes, because he's so brilliant in it, and he doesn't make it about himself. He makes it about the cast, and I can't think of anyone who would have fitted that role so beautifully. And so I was very grateful that he agreed after we all wanted him to do it.
And you mentioned that the actors hadn't been all together in one place very often, certainly in 17 years since the show went off the air. How was that a challenge, like in terms of arranging schedules and logistics? And especially then you had COVID, and then you have to bring them on when you eventually do get a chance to film?
Well, there was yes to all of the above. COVID, yes. Schedules, yes. Diaries, yes. I would say that it was the priority for all 6 of them. They all really wanted to make a date work. We obviously were supposed to go in March 2020. We didn't. We then looked at a date in August and thought about it. But then with a month to go or something, we all did a Zoom call, the 7 of us, and they were like, let's just wait a little bit longer. Let's just see if things are opening up more. And then it came to sort of February time, and we felt really good. We were coming out in LA of that sort of spike that happened end of January. And so it felt like, as open air restaurants started opening up and we felt like there was light at the end of a very dark 2020 tunnel, this would be a really lovely thing to sort of do in April and May. And then it was about getting their diaries together. They all cancelled whatever they had on the days that made it work. But then I was so excited about the moment, and that, if you haven't seen the film, they all walk on one by one, and the idea was that they wouldn't see each other before we started shooting, so that the first time they were actually together as a 6, it would be on camera. It was a big part for me of like that moment when you're surrounded by the thing that made you most famous, Central Perk, the apartments, and with your 5 castmates. And I get there the day before, and all of their caravans, their Winnebagos, their dressing rooms, we had the whole of Warner Brothers lot, which is so huge. But yet someone had decided that the best place for their caravans, their Winnebagos, was right next to each other. They were literally touching. And I literally had a freak out going, they've spent 17 years not seeing each other. We are so nearly there to getting them together for the first time on camera. And we've decided to put their dressing rooms right next to each other. So basically we put tarpaulin up under each doorway, so that even if they were to arrive at the right time, the car could park up and they wouldn't see each other, which is silly because of course they've all seen each other. They spend loads of time with each other. I just wanted to create that magic. And then I texted the 6 of them and I was like, guys, your dressing rooms are right next door to each other. I'm begging you, during your hair, makeup, when you're getting dressed, please don't go and say hi to each other. Please save it for camera. And they thought that was hilarious and used it as a great opportunity to wind me up about how much time they were spending together. And they're like, well, we're in the car together now. We're riding together. Courtney, will you pick me up some breakfast? And all of this just winding me up. And they sort of thought it was unnecessary. I remember Jen saying, it will make no difference. It'll be fine if we see each other first. But then you see, when you see the film, about that gut punch of emotion that swelled over all of them when they walked into that room. I'm not sure we would have got that moment if we hadn't have kept them apart and asked them to, do what we really wanted them to do, because it was a genuinely very moving moment for all of them, and I think that comes across on camera.
Congratulations on the special and
Thanks, Daniel.
and pulling it off, and thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.